Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Y&R Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Kyle Abbott sat alone in the dimly lit office at Genoa, his fingers tapping anxiously against the sleek surface of his desk. The tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating, as he replayed in his mind every suspicious glance, every evasive answer Holden had given over the last few weeks. Something about Holden never sat right with him. His sudden appearance in Genoa City, his charm that felt just a little too polished, and his growing closeness with Claire had Kyle's instincts screaming that something wasn't right. Kyle had made enough mistakes in love and business to know that ignoring a gut feeling could be disastrous. This time, he was determined not to be blindsided again. If Holden had a secret, Kyle was going to find it, and he knew exactly who to call to make that happen. That night, Kyle reached out to someone who had a reputation for digging up dirt when others couldn't. Sienna, a private investigator with a morally flexible compass and an insatiable hunger for cash. She wasn't cheap, but Kyle didn't care about the cost. The stakes were too high. He wanted the truth no matter what it took. When she arrived at his office, Sienna looked every bit the part of someone who thrived in the shadows. Dressed in black, her eyes sharp and calculating, she didn't waste time with small talk. "You said this was urgent," she said coolly, crossing her legs as she sat down. Kyle leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I want you to find out everything you can about Holden. His past, his real name if he's using a fake one, where he's from, who he's been involved with, everything. Money isn't an issue." Sienna's expression didn't change, but Kyle could tell she was intrigued. "You think he's hiding something?" she asked, already pulling out her small notepad. Kyle's jaw tightened. "I know he is. And I want proof. Whatever you find, I want it documented." Discreetly. There was a pause as she sized him up, perhaps wondering if he truly understood what he was asking for. "Bribing me to dig up dirt on someone isn't exactly legal, Kyle," she said with a smirk. "Then consider it a generous consulting fee," Kyle shot back, sliding a thick envelope across the desk. She didn't hesitate to take it, slipping it into her jacket. "You'll have your answers soon," she said before vanishing into the night. As the days passed, Kyle's nerves grew taut. He tried to focus on work, but his mind kept drifting to Claire and how easily she seemed to trust Holden. He couldn't shake the image of her smiling at him, completely unaware of the man's hidden motives. Kyle's protective instincts were consuming him. He told himself that this wasn't about jealousy, but about keeping someone he cared about safe. Still deep down he knew there was more to it. Ever since Tara, Kyle had become wary of charming liars who pretended to be something they weren't. He didn't want Claire, or anyone else, to fall victim to another manipulator. Meanwhile, Sienna worked fast. Within a few days, she had tracked down fragments of Holden's past that didn't add up. His previous addresses didn't match his story. He had used at least 2 aliases in the last 5 years, and one of them was tied to a shady business deal that went south in Chicago. But that was only the surface. The deeper she dug, the darker it got. She discovered a sealed police report under one of his old names. A report involving a woman who went missing under mysterious circumstances. The case was never solved, and Holden was never charged, but the timing and details were too suspicious to ignore. Sienna knew she had hit something explosive. When she met Kyle again, it was late evening at the Grand Phoenix. They sat in a quiet corner of the lobby bar, away from prying eyes. Sienna slid a small folder across the table. "You were right," she said, her voice low. "Holden's not who he says he is." Kyle's heart raced as he opened the folder. Inside were photos, reports, and a printed police document with the name Ethan Cole, one of Holden's known aliases. "He changed his identity after leaving Chicago," Sienna continued. "That's when he started going by Holden. There's a woman connected to him who disappeared around the same time. Her name was Lydia Marks. The police never proved anything, but he was the last person seen with her." Kyle's face drained of color as he read the details. It felt surreal. Holden, the same man who had charmed Claire and insinuated himself into Genoa City life, might be hiding a terrible crime. "Are you sure about this?" Kyle asked, his voice trembling slightly. Sienna nodded. "I double-checked everything. He's been careful but not careful enough. He wiped traces of his past, But digital footprints don't lie. She leaned in closer. If you want, I can find out more. Maybe even track down what really happened to Lydia. But it'll cost you. Kyle didn't hesitate. Do it. Whatever you need, I'll pay. Over the next week, Kyle's anxiety mounted. Sienna's updates were sporadic and vague, each one hinting at something darker. Then one night she called him. Meet me in the parking lot behind Crimson Lights. I've got something you'll want to see. The urgency in her tone sent a chill down Kyle's spine. When he arrived, she was waiting near her car, holding a USB drive. What's this? He asked. Proof, she replied. I hacked into an old email account tied to one of Holden's aliases. You won't believe what's in there. They sat inside Kyle's car as she plugged the drive into her laptop. The emails revealed correspondence between Holden, then Ethan, and a man named Victor Hale, discussing payments, threats, and a situation that needed to be cleaned up. The implication was horrifying. Holden hadn't just known about Lydia's disappearance. He might have been directly involved. Kyle sat in silence, the weight of what he'd just learned crashing over him. So he's dangerous, Kyle whispered. Worse than I thought, Sienna said. He's been running from this for years. If this gets out, his life here is over. Kyle exhaled sharply, gripping the steering wheel. It needs to get out. Claire deserves to know who she's dealing with. But Sienna stopped him. Be careful. If Holden finds out you're behind this, he won't take it lightly. Men like him don't play nice when they're cornered. Kyle nodded grimly. Then I'll make sure he never knows it came from me. The next day, Kyle struggled with the decision of how to reveal what he'd found. Confronting Holden outright would risk exposing Sienna's involvement and could make Holden lash out. Yet keeping quiet felt impossible. He decided to start with Claire, but when he found her at society, Holden was already there, his arm casually draped around her chair. The sight made Kyle's blood boil. He approached them, his tone deceptively calm. Holden, Claire, he greeted. Holden's smile didn't falter, but there was something in his eyes. A flicker of awareness, maybe even suspicion. Kyle, Holden said smoothly, you look tense. Everything okay? Kyle forced a smirk. Never better. Just curious, Holden. How's life in Chicago these days? The question landed like a grenade. Claire looked confused, but Holden's expression hardened for a split second before he recovered. I haven't been to Chicago in years, he said evenly. Why do you ask? Kyle leaned closer. Oh, no reason. Just heard some interesting things about a man who looks a lot like you from that city. Thought you might know him. The tension at the table was electric. Claire glanced between them, sensing something was wrong. Holden laughed, though it sounded forced. You must have me confused with someone else. Kyle nodded slowly, a cold smile forming. Maybe I do. But I'll find out soon enough. Then he walked away, leaving Claire and Holden in stunned silence. Later that night, Holden confronted Kyle outside Chabot. His polite mask was gone. Stay out of my business, he hissed. You don't know what you're dealing with. Kyle stood his ground. No, Holden, or should I say Ethan. I know exactly what I'm dealing with. And I'm not letting you hurt anyone here. Holden's face darkened. You have no idea what you're talking about. Kyle smirked. Then you won't mind if I tell Claire everything. That's when Holden's composure snapped. He grabbed Kyle by the collar, shoving him against the wall. You'll regret this, he growled before storming off into the night. Shaken but undeterred, Kyle knew he couldn't back down now. He called Sienna the next morning, demanding every piece of proof she had gathered. I'm going to expose him, he said firmly. If he's capable of what I think he is, everyone needs to know. But Sienna hesitated. Kyle, listen to me. You're in dangerous territory. I found something else, you won't believe this. Lydia Marks didn't just disappear. She was found dead 2 years later, but the case was buried. And guess who handled the investigation? A detective on Holden's payroll. He covered it up. Kyle's stomach turned. You're saying he killed her? Sienna didn't answer right away. Let's just say the evidence strongly suggests it. Kyle knew there was no going back. He arranged to meet Claire privately, away from Holden's influence. When he finally told her everything, she was horrified. That can't be true, she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. Holden wouldn't, but Kyle handed her the folder Sienna compiled. "Read it. Then tell me I'm wrong." As she went through the pages, her face paled. "Oh my God," she murmured. "I thought I knew him. He told me he lost his fiancée in an accident. He said it destroyed him." Kyle shook his head sadly. "He destroyed her, Claire. He's been lying to everyone, including you." Word spread quickly after that. Once the truth about Holden's past started leaking out, chaos erupted in Genoa City. Holden tried to deny everything, but Sienna's evidence was airtight. Old associates began to surface, confirming pieces of the story. The walls were closing in. Holden lashed out, threatening to take Kyle down for exposing him, but it was too late. His secret was out. The name Ethan Cole became headline news, tied to the unsolved death of Lydia Marks and multiple counts of fraud and identity theft. In the end, Kyle's gamble paid off, but at a cost. Holden was arrested after attempting to flee town, and though justice was finally served, the fallout left emotional scars. Claire was devastated, feeling betrayed and humiliated for believing in him. Kyle tried to comfort her, but she was too shattered to listen. "You were right," she said bitterly. "But I wish you hadn't been." Kyle understood. He hadn't wanted to destroy her trust, only to protect her from a monster. As for Sienna, she disappeared soon after the arrest, her job done and her payment well earned. Kyle knew she'd probably moved on to her next shady client, but he was grateful. Her work had saved someone's life, even if it meant crossing moral lines. Late one night, Kyle stood on his balcony, looking out over the lights of Genoa City. The truth had come at a heavy price. Trust broken, hearts shattered, and lines crossed that could never be undone. But for once, Kyle felt he had done the right thing, no matter how messy it was. Holden's terrible secret was finally out, and though the aftermath left the town shaken, Kyle knew that uncovering the truth was worth every risk. Because in a city like Genoa, where lies and power ruled the game, the truth was the most dangerous weapon of all. The air in the coffee shop was thick with the competing aromas of roasted beans and sweet pastries, a stark contrast to the tension simmering at the small corner table. Kyle Abbott leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush that was barely audible over the gentle hiss of the espresso machine. He wasn't just asking for a favor. He was proposing a pact, and the carefully neutral expression on Sienna's face was the battlefield upon which his proposal was being waged. He spoke of Holden, of the gnawing, inexplicable unease that had taken root in his gut, a feeling that the man his mother was entwining her life with was not the straightforward, charming philanthropist he presented to the world. It was more than just protective suspicion. It was a deep-seated conviction that a shadow lurked behind Holden's easy smile, a shadow that threatened to engulf the entire Abbott family in a darkness they couldn't yet comprehend. He appealed to Sienna's loyalty, not just to him, but to the family as a whole, painting a picture of a potential threat that needed to be neutralized before it could strike. Sienna listened, her fingers tracing the rim of her ceramic mug, her initial reluctance a visible, almost tangible force in the space between them. She liked Holden. He'd always been kind, generous with his time and donations at the foundation, and he seemed to genuinely adore Diane. To dig into his past felt like a violation, a betrayal of a basic trust. But Kyle was relentless, his arguments sharp and precise. He wasn't asking her to fabricate anything, he insisted, only to uncover the truth. "If he's the man he says he is," Kyle murmured, his eyes locking with hers, "then he has nothing to fear, and we all get peace of mind. But if he's not, don't you think we have a right to know? Don't you think my mother has a right to be safe?" He could see the conflict in her eyes, the war between her conscience and her allegiance. It was then that he played his final card, not with a dramatic flourish, but with a quiet, calculated intensity. He slid a small, discreet key across the table. "This is for a storage locker on the edge of town," he said. "It's paid for a year in advance. There's space in there. A lot of space. Enough for you to finally have a fresh start, to get your own place, to be free of all the roommates and the instability." The unspoken offer hung in the air, far more potent than any sum of cash. He was offering her independence, a foundation, a tangible piece of a future she desperately wanted but couldn't quite grasp on her own. The bribe was not a blunt instrument. It was a masterfully crafted key, designed to fit the specific lock of Sienna's aspirations. He wasn't buying her malice, he was purchasing her access, her discretion and her silence. He was leveraging her position at the foundation, her technical skills, and her vulnerable desire for stability against the fortress of Holden's privacy. Sienna stared at the key, a simple piece of metal that felt impossibly heavy with implication. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of guilt warring with a desperate, rising hope. This could change everything for her. A secure place to live, a sanctuary of her own. It was a dream she'd almost abandoned. She thought of Diane's kindness, of the potential fallout, the devastation such a secret could cause. But then she looked at Kyle's determined, worried face, and she felt the cold, solid weight of the key in her palm as her fingers finally closed around it. The decision was made not with a pronouncement, but with a slow, resigned nod. The line had been crossed. She was now a clandestine operative in Kyle's private war, her conscience soothed by the noble cause and her future secured by the price of her compliance. The digging began in the digital shadows, a realm where Sienna was both hunter and ghost. At first it was a fruitless, almost boring endeavor. Holden's public record was exactly what one would expect. A trail of business incorporations, charitable donations, property deeds, and the bland positive press clippings of a successful low-profile businessman. It was a biography written in legal documents and press releases, meticulously clean and utterly soulless. But Sienna, armed with the tenacity that Kyle's bribe had forged, knew that no one's past was ever this pristine. It was the very perfection of the record that screamed of curation, of a narrative carefully constructed and maintained. She began to look for the seams, the tiny cracks where the facade might have splintered. She cross-referenced old addresses against business filings, ran searches through archived newspaper databases from towns he was known to have lived in decades ago, and used her access to more sensitive, though not strictly illegal, databases available through the Foundation's network for high-level donor vetting. It was a single anomalous thread that finally began to unravel the entire tapestry. A business name, Ethelred Holdings, listed as a minor partner in one of Holden's first ventures, appeared and then vanished from all corporate records within an 18-month period. It was a ghost company, a shell with no discernible assets or subsequent history. Digging deeper, she found that the registered agent for Ethelred was a man named Arthur Finnegan, a name that, upon further investigation, seemed to belong to a person who had effectively ceased to exist around the same time the company dissolved. There was no death certificate, no social security activity, no digital footprint whatsoever post-2003. It was as if he had simply been erased. This single, bizarre anomaly became Sienna's obsession. She followed the trail of Arthur Finnegan backward, and in doing so she inadvertently pulled on a thread connected to Holden's entire life. She discovered that Holden and Arthur had been roommates in their 20s, long before Holden's wealth was established, partners in a small struggling import-export business. And then she found it. A tiny 3-paragraph article buried in the back pages of a now-defunct local newspaper in a Midwestern town she'd never heard of. It reported a fire, a devastating blaze that had consumed a warehouse leased to their fledgling company. The fire was ruled accidental, caused by faulty electrical wiring, but the article noted one peculiar, haunting detail. Arthur Finnegan had been working late inside the warehouse that night. He was listed as the sole casualty. A cold dread began to creep up Sienna's spine, a sensation entirely different from the initial thrill of the hunt. This was no longer a theoretical exercise. It was the outline of a tragedy. She pushed further, her fingers flying across the keyboard with a new grim purpose. She accessed insurance databases, a significant ethical and legal breach that made her stomach clench, but the key to the storage locker felt like a brand on her conscience, pushing her forward. And there it was, the fact that turned a tragic accident into a terrifying possibility. A massive insurance policy had been taken out on the warehouse and its contents just 6 weeks before the fire. The payout was substantial, a life-changing sum that formed the very cornerstone of the capital Holden had used to launch his subsequent, wildly successful business empire. The beneficiary of that policy was solely Holden. Arthur Finnegan's name was nowhere to be found. The pieces, once scattered and meaningless, now slammed together with the force of a physical blow.